As many of you can tell, I have really been enjoying playing Darktide and Warhammer games in general over the past few months. I mean, I went from uploading Halo content exclusively to saying, fuck it, Warhammer time, baby, blood for the Emperor, skulls for the Golden Throne. On top of that, a big aspect of Warhammer in general is that the lore and backstory behind the universe is just so in depth, and it just has so many layers to it. So, understandably, something that a lot of people have had issues with is the story of Darktide, or the lack of it. It is near impossible to fix a bad story if it's already been told, but I believe that there is some potential with some of the general aspects that we have been given, with some good additions and restructuring to create a cohesive storyline. We could actually end up with something worthwhile in the future.
Beginning, middle, end. Facts, details, condense, plot, tell it.
To go through this plan with you, I will need a little bit of tolerance from you all while I try to paint a picture of how this can be achieved one step at a time. Without a doubt in my mind, the first thing that we need is for Fatshark to do a much better job at setting the scene for the story. Darktide has a lot of moving parts, and many aspects feel unfinished or nowhere near their original design. We see many examples of this in-game, with the half-baked traitor storyline, only part of a crafting system, and overall a very limited offering of classes and playstyles when compared to the Vermintide games. While some issues can be fixed with time, it's difficult to change a story. That's why I would fundamentally reorganize the game and its missions. Basically, we need to clean this shit up. We get a reasonable introduction to playing the game with the tutorial and prologue, but this first section fails completely to explain who you are even fighting. I would say that it's very unlikely for a new player to have read the dev blogs that detail the backstory for the Mobian Sixth. The information is there, it exists, but Fatshark don't actually explain it in the game. Honestly, this really ruins the world building that Dan Abnett was able to do as part of his role in the production of this game. He came up with some cool concepts about the Mobian Sixth being corrupted by the trauma of their experiences in the Guard. It feels pointless to have these cool ideas and have Dan Abnett create this lore but not actually incorporate it into the story. They are mentioned as traitors and heretics, only calling themselves the Sixth when they speak out during missions.
Die for the Sixth!
However, on the Morningstar, to my knowledge, they are never once officially called the Mobian Sixth. Hell, even this fact could be a great storytelling device that the Imperium, and by extension, the Inquisition, is doing a cover-up job on the fact that a whole regiment of local guardsmen have turned traitor. It could provide some much-needed gravity to the story where the characters actually realize that the enemies they are fighting were raised in the very hive that they are standing on. I mean, what do other Mobian locals like Zola or Morrow know about this? We don't actually know, because none of it is ever addressed. Basically, the information for the universe is there, but it's so scattered and unorganized, it really makes the story such a weak aspect of the game. What I would have Fatshark do is rework the in-game mission screen so that it has a different tab up the top. You can have the quick play tab, which is exactly what we have now, just the ability to jump into any mission on a certain difficulty and just start smashing skulls.
What exactly is it that they do?
Kick names, take ass.
Yeah, that's right.
Then Fatshark should have a custom screen, like a separate tab where you can just pick a specific mission and set its difficulty. Essentially, just have the same system as Vermintide 2 with the option for special modifiers like power supply issues so that players have the freedom to play exactly how they want. I would also set the missions into a particular order, almost like you are deploying into an area of the Hive City each time. So you can start off with the slums and rundown areas, then onto the manufactorums, and then the ruins outside the Hive Cities, before finally moving up to Throneside. Ordering the missions in this way would give structure, and in these missions you can then have some mandatory dialogue at certain points so that you have a bit more background information. This can be where we start to talk about stuff like who the Mobian Sixth are, and even give some cool background information for the characters that we see on the Morningstar, because this stuff does happen in the game, but it is just occurring on a random basis. You don't have it happening consistently, and not every player gets those same audio lines. Some people will know a lot more about Agent Zola than they will about Morrow, or people may not even notice it at all because it can sometimes happen at a hectic moment. So it's important to be able to have some baseline information that everyone can get. Another benefit of reorganizing the missions in this way is that it can allow you to add more missions onto the existing offering in an easy to understand way. I'll talk more about the idea of adding missions later in the video, but something to consider is that in the future with DLC storylines, we could actually see some potential clashing between new storylines and old storylines, or just making things too jumbled. If you create a new character or if there's a new class, you don't want to end up with the same traitor cutscenes. So I would make the executive decision to actually move those cutscenes to be after particular missions in this new ordered format, instead of being after when you reach a certain level. I believe that if you ordered the cutscenes in this way, it would provide a much better flow to the story, and it would be able to package the traitor storyline into a concise area of the game, so that it doesn't get in the way of future DLC, which is likely to be far better story-wise. I mean, the bar was set pretty low, so I'm sure almost anything would be better. I mean, I really freaking hope it would be better. I know that reorganizing the audio and adding aspects that may not have been originally in the game will be difficult to execute, but it could actually salvage some semblance of a story, which is better than nothing. Some of you may also be thinking, but Kiv, why on earth does that matter to us? We've already finished the game. Well, true, but there are still going to be new players, and there are still going to be console players that will be introduced to Darktide, so it's going to be a lot better for the game longevity-wise if the original main base game is as good as we can get it. This might be going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I really like the idea of the Inquisition restricting information to the rejects at first, but then telling you more as they trust you more. So you kind of have to piece things together as the story progresses. And the feeling that I get is that this was one of the original intentions behind the storytelling of the game, that you have to kind of pay attention, and that if you do, you'll be able to get things a lot quicker. But I think that this would be a really cool way to indirectly incorporate your trust level into the missions, so that as you progress and as your character levels up, the Inquisition trusts you more, so they actually tell you more information. So something that I think would be good to see in the future is, in the first mission, you could have a dialogue line where a character asks, so who are these guys and why are they shooting at us? And Morrow can respond with a very blunt, they're traitors, don't worry about it. But on a later mission, when he trusts you more, he may say something along the lines of, they were the Mobian Sixth, but they became corrupted, and they now are the greatest shame of the Mobian sector, so give these damn traitors what they deserve. I think that this would be awesome to see in the game, but not as a random dialogue option. I think that everyone should get this same level of storytelling, and it shouldn't be left up to chance. That's pretty much how we can help to give a bit more context and set the scene of the game a bit better. The second thing that Fatshark need to do, though, is to add some additional missions which will enhance the traitor storyline and link to the first batch of future content. So obviously, we will have further content and missions to the game added over time, but in order for those things to gel and make sense, I think that the traitor storyline should partially lead into it and just be sort of the next aspect of the ongoing story. So adding missions is great, but this would also be a good time to add something to make the traitor storyline a little less shit. So here's how I would try to go about improving the traitor storyline. If I was Fatshark, what I would do is take the proposed order of the missions, pick one of them, and say, okay, we're going to take this mission, and then add the traitor character on as a fifth character to join the other 4 players that can be controlled by the AI, and this is very simply with the main goal of introducing the character. That way there is some kind of a base level interaction with the traitor. During this mission, the traitor could be really friendly on the surface, have good banter with you, but you will be able to notice through the gameplay that the squad is getting constantly ambushed, or when a boss arrives, her gun is suddenly jammed and she can't help us. Now, granted, this is a extremely predictable story then, if you are able to meet the character and see them do all of this shady crap. And I touched on it in my previous video, but a predictable story is still better than no story at all. Now, the next step I would do is I would use that as a springboard to then bounce into the first batch of DLC content. So the way I would do that is I would very simply have Rannick come up to you and say that the traitor was able to send one last transmission before we were able to execute them. And then Rannick can go into detail about how something else has been compromised and that you now need to go to this new location and flush out the Mobian Sixth. Then that can be your lead in, so that way there is a cohesive story that follows a path. I think that this would be great, and it does offer up the potential of exploring other story aspects that were only teased in the past. I think it would be great if we could cover things like who Inquisitor Grendel is, or if we are able to hunt down significant high-ranking members of the Mobian Sixth, and just potentially exploring new environments. Because one of the first things that I thought about when I saw the other planets in the character creation screen is, man, it would be awesome if we could go to all of these different planets and have different environments, visuals, and gameplay opportunities that we could go through in all of those different areas. So I think that would be another cool concept that I'd love to see in the future of the game. And it's possible. You know, I don't exactly know what Fatshark has in the pipeline, but I think that Darktide is just brimming with potential and a lot more opportunities story-wise than what we've seen so far. So even though things do seem a bit lackluster right now, I am hopeful for the future. But what do you all think about this? Do you think that some of these changes would improve Darktide? Do you have any other ideas or things that you'd want Fatshark to explore in the future? Let me know in the comment section down below, but that does just about do it for today. So I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you did, then you know what to do. I've been Kiv, and I'll see you all on the next one.